Welcome to GRE. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Will Rogers said, find out where the people are going and buy the land before they get there. But how do you know where they're going and what property types would make sense to buy? We're talking about actionable path of progress real estate investing today on Get Rich Education. You can get a 50-year-old house somewhere or buy a new one directly from the builder with Tenant resilient amenities already built in. With over 3,000 Florida units at different construction stages, they are exclusively for investors. President Wagner and Alaska and team also invest strongly in their own product. That's belief. Start at buildtorentdirect.com. That's build the number 2 rentdirect.com or text 407-927-5074. Hey, is your IRA in a real estate syndication? Yikes, a 37% UBIT tax could hit you, but you still have a chance to set up your EQRP and avoid this. Did you make too much money in 2020 and need more deductions? Now federal law lets you set up an EQRP in 2021 and get deductions for last year, retroactively. Even put old IRA and 401k money in Bitcoin, gold, or your own business. Get control of all of your retirement money, tax and penalty free. Text EQRP in all capital letters to 72,000.
You're listening to the show that has created more financial freedom than nearly any show in the world. This is Get Rich Education.
Welcome to GRE, from Sioux City, Iowa to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and across 188 nations worldwide. I'm Keith Weinhold. This is Get Rich Education. You know, migration to Florida, that is not a new phenomena at all. In fact, today, only about 1/3 of the state's population claims a Florida birthplace. Yeah, 2/3 are from somewhere else, many from Cuba and Latin America, but really from every state in most nations. Migration to Florida, that is an old story. In fact, in the late 1800s, Florida grew really rapidly because back then, people moved south. They were looking for land to farm. And then later, the great citrus rush and land boom that started in the early decades of the 20th century, and it really accelerated in the 1920s, attracting both Northerners and Southerners to Florida. Florida's population doubled between 1920 and 1940, and then doubled again by 1960, and again by 1980, and once again by 2010. And snowbird migration made really places like New York and Pennsylvania and Ohio leading contributors to Florida population growth after about 1960 or so. And then, of course, today, foreign immigrants, especially Cubans, have added to the influx. And every one of these people need a place to live. Today, Florida had the highest in-migration of all states between the years 2020 and 2021, and 61% of those that moved to Florida from 2020 to 2021 are renters. So to Will Rogers' point, how do you find out where people are moving? Well, just look at history. In-migration to Florida is not any kind of fad. And you do need to be attentive to that because sometimes migration patterns are fads. You need to be wary of those. For example, about 10 years ago, the shale boom in North Dakota created a short-term in-migration pattern, but that was not nearly as sustainable as Florida's. Now today, as real estate investors, we kind of look around, we survey how well we're doing, how our cash flow is looking. We've really been celebrating this stepped up rent growth. Rents are rising multiples faster than historic norms. But let's look at the downside too. What about your expense growth? With property prices appreciating at elevated levels nationally, if you have a proportionate rise in your property taxes because you're getting higher assessments from your county or municipality at the same mill rate due to those higher property values, well, then that is expense growth. Now, fortunately, if you have, say, 10% rent growth and you also have 10% property tax growth, Well, you are better off as an investor. That's a trade that you want to make. Why is that? Well, because of course, your monthly rent amount is substantially higher than your monthly property tax layout. It's just something that you need to pay attention to in today's landscape. Now, on last week's episode here, I discussed from beginning to end, step by step, on how to buy an income property. I walked you through due diligence and inspection and appraisal and all of that. This week's episode complements last week's nicely because this is an opportunity for you to act with a specific source for buying Florida rental property with a build-to-rent developer. Yeah, homes built all new, specifically with a renter in mind from day one. So what they do is they build, rent, and manage the property all for you, and it's single-family homes, townhomes, and four-plexes in Path of Progress, Florida. I met today's guest a couple years ago that educates you on this market really well. He's also a great family guy. And you know something? Just between you and me, I have had other national property developers tell me, yeah, I just can't beat their prices. Well, that's who we're talking to today. And I'll ask about how they deliver lower prices than the competition. You can learn more and connect with the provider at getricheducation.com/Sunshine State. That's a little hard to say. I sure hope that I never need to get my shoe shined in the Sunshine State. Boy, I certainly wouldn't want to say that out loud either. Oh, well, I guess I just did. And it was recorded, and tens of thousands of people heard it. Sometimes I wonder how I chose to live this life where everything that I say is recorded and uploaded to the internet. I guess I am just in a quirky mood today. Geez, what a dork here. Replete and unrepentant. Let's move on so we can bring in our excellent guest sooner and so as to also save you from this lack of humor. I mean, really, yesterday, being a successful real estate investor commonly entailed investing only in your local market and being your own landlord so that all the tenants had your phone number. And yesteryear's real estate investor was rushing to pay down their high interest rate mortgage loans. Remember, they peaked at 18% in 1981 on a 30-year fixed loan. And it involved things back then in yesteryear like saving a chunk of money in a savings account on the side because you used to be able to get an attractive interest rates. Yeah, you could get a 10% yield on a bank savings account 40 years ago. Well, fast forward to today. Today's smart work approach real estate investor that's aligned with the times invests where the numbers make sense and outsources property management in order to keep your quality of life high and saving not too much on the side, little more than an emergency fund. And it involves things like keeping your mortgage loan balances high because they're at low interest rates. And now you've got more leverage and you can control more property that way. So that is really yesteryear's real estate investor versus today's real estate investor. And today's discussion here really plays into that. Today's playbook for successful real estate investing. Let's talk about Florida real estate today. We'll even get actual addresses of a real property or two. You can see how much they've appreciated and more. Today's guest has over 19 years of experience in leadership in the hospitality field and in commercial and residential real estate construction and development. He recently co-authored a great book as well, along with really many of he and I's mutual industry friends. Welcome to GRE, Wagner and Alaska.
Thank you, Keith, so much for having me. Always a pleasure and very honored to be here in your podcast once again.
Before we talk about markets and properties, tell us about your book. That's pretty cool.
I've been very blessed. I came from Brazil, actually, about 28 years ago. I never thought I could actually speak English. And now here you are, co-authoring a book with brilliant minds. So the book is called Persistent Pivots and Game Changers. This book, it was actually idealized and forwarded by Kyle Wilson, which is a great guy. But we had so many amazing people with this book. We have Mark Ogden, which is an NFL player. We have Kevin Eastman, which is an NBA coach. We have Phil Collins, the lead guitarist of Def Leppard. And here we are, Wagner in Alaska, directly from Brazil, participating in this book. This book is really telling a little bit about my story, how I migrated to the U.S., and a little bit about the tough times that we went through, that we had to pivot and really adapt ourselves and become good at what we do so we can actually win a little space in the sunshine in the US, which for me, Keith, it's the best country in the world.
It sounds like a really motivating book. And talking about being good at what you do, you are a provider, developer, and a builder of new construction. So we're talking about build to rent properties across a pretty wide swath of Florida. You're doing a good bit of volume. And with the down drain in supply, a lot of people are really looking for where to buy that next income property in the path of progress, Wagner. So before we talk about the properties themselves, maybe we should pull back and just talk more about the area, the in-migration hotbed really for generations in America now of Florida. So tell us about some of those areas that you operate in, Wagner.
We're very lucky to be in a great industry in which we provide actually entry-level homes for a lot of clients in need that are actually looking for rental, but once you build those new homes, you're talking about location. That's the great thing about building a new house. We can select where to build. We don't have to go to existing areas and areas that are actually deteriorating. We follow the jobs. We follow the leaders. We follow Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos. What are they doing? Where are they building? What are they creating? And that's the jobs that we like. We like technology. We like distribution. And we love, the medical field overall. So those are usually the drivers. So we actually go zoom in the map, in the Florida map, and we usually travel about an hour and a half to maximum 2 hours from our core, which is Orlando, Florida. So on the east coast of Florida, which is actually the I-95 corridor, those corridors are very important because that's the pathway of progress, right? So I-95 connects Miami all the way up to New York. And right here in Central Florida, it's about an hour and 5 minutes from Orlando to Palm Bay, Florida. Palm Bay is a neighboring city of Cocoa Beach, where exactly SpaceX is,
right.
Melbourne. We're actually connected to 4 international airports within very, very close proximity. We have over 400 technology companies in Melbourne, which is a neighboring city of Palm Bay. And that area has just had unbelievable, close to 60% appreciation in the past 16 months. Rents are following that appreciation, and we're very lucky to come in about 6 years ago and buy a lot of land. So our secret is really being at the right place at the right time, and I can call it luck, but luck for me is when preparation meets opportunity, right?
100%. Let's talk about geography for a moment, Wagner. My audience knows because I've told them that in general, in the United States, coastal areas don't provide cash flow, but there are a few exceptions to that. And I sort of think of the east coast of Florida from about Palm Bay up to Jacksonville as one being able to generally find investor advantage areas. Now, Palm Bay is about halfway down the east coast of Florida, pretty much equidistant between Jacksonville and Miami, but that's just really roughly how I see it. Kind of Palm Bay and north of there along the coast to Jacksonville, that's still a cash flow area. Is that the way you see it? Are there any nuances you'd like to temper with that since you're working actively in that market all the time?
You're absolutely correct. This is a very temporary, high cash flowing area. And the reason why, because the pathway of growth is really there. So we have Port Canaveral, which is one of the largest passenger ports in the country. We actually have the Bright Line, which is a train line that now connects the Orlando International Airport to Disney, to Palm Bay, all the way down to Miami. So the time to buy, Keith, was yesterday, as we usually say, right? But it's still a good cash flowing area. From Palm Bay all the way up north to Jacksonville are fantastic areas. And if you're looking for a coastal area that has a very high potential for appreciation as well and cash flow, definitely those areas are going to be very, very promising. As I have several properties there myself, I can attest to you right now that is a high cash flow area and absolutely crazy, amazing appreciation, but definitely not for long. Prices are going up, inventory is scarce, so it's not going to be that way for long. You're absolutely correct.
Yeah, as those prices continue to appreciate and rents struggle to keep up proportionally, do you ever see a time, whether that's 3 years from today or 11 years from today, where for new purchases, the numbers just would not work anymore?
Absolutely. I really do. I think very shortly, actually. I don't even see a 3-year forecast. I see in the next 12 to 18 months, prices are going to be to the point.
Interesting.
Cash flow will not actually be existent in those areas just because of the high appreciation. But then again, if you purchase at the right time, at the right price, and you have the right loans in place that actually give you that ability to leverage properly and to play the arbitrage game and keep that difference, you do really, really well. I mean, this is definitely the time. I have been investing in Palm Bay for almost 6 years, and I have never seen a better time for you to get in before the big wave of appreciation come in again. Because just to give you an idea, I bought some lots in Palm Bay for $5,000 back about 6 years ago. Today, you cannot find anything that is decent for less than $35,000 to $40,000, right?
Astounding.
I was selling houses in Palm Bay for about $205,000. Today, they're actually selling the same property. About 16 months ago, I was selling for $205,000. Today, we're selling it for $304,000. So that is not a cash flowing property anymore. But we do have some townhomes in a built-to-rent community selling for $225,000, which makes that cash flow possible. So we actually look for opportunities that are high cash flow, high appreciation, and that are actually going to give you the best investment for your money. So Palm Bay is a very limited, still available appreciation window, but you're absolutely correct. All the coastal areas are very, very high in appreciation, absolutely very high demand. So if you don't act quickly, that's not going to be there for long.
Before we talk about properties, a bit more on the market here. You talked about Orlando as a reference point, pretty much in the center of the state. I think a lot of investors know now that Orlando proper really doesn't give the good cash flow. A lot of people think of Orlando and kind of pigeonhole that entire area as Disney and the entertainment industry and all those sorts of things for tourists. But you mentioned on some of the economic sectors, there's so much more than that in this region of kind of the center of Florida. So tell us about some more of those economic sectors, because of course our tenants need to be able to pay the rent and have durable income streams.
You're absolutely correct. So moving about an hour and 15 minutes northwest of Orlando, it's a big MSA. Actually, it's the largest, fastest growing MSA in the country in 2021, which is called The Villages. If you're not familiar with The Villages is actually located in 3 different counties: Marion County, Lake County, and Sutter County. So this is such a large, one of the largest retirement communities in the country that actually have over 58 golf courses. And recently, The Villages did a new acquisition for 55 and over demographics, which they bought 8,000 acres, and they're building 42,000 new homes for 55 and over. What does that bring? New hospitals, new assisted living facilities, new golf courses, new retail centers. And that's really great because the average of the residents of The Villages have over 800 average credit scores. So that brings very high qualified purchases to live there. And those services are actually in high demand. A little bit north of The Villages, there's a city called what we call the Greater Ocala area where we build. Bellevue, Summerfield, Ocala, Oklahoma, Denellen, those are the suburbs of The Villages. So people that actually commute and drive to The Villages, that's where they live. Because even if you made all the money in the world, unless you're 55 and over, you can't live at The Villages. So we have seen, Keith, actually I closed the property about a couple of weeks ago in that area, and the address is 735 Marion Oaks Manor. You guys can look at it in Zillow. And that property sold for $198,000. It's renting right now for $1,700, and I already have a tenant moved in.
Those numbers work?
Are skyrocketing in that area as well. Just to give you guys an idea on appreciation and rent growth in that area. I was selling the same property about 18 months ago, 16 to 18 months for $139,900, right? Prices in that area now are being sold and appraised for about $249,000. We're selling it a little bit less expensive than that because we wanted to make sure the investor has built-in equity. But what you're going to find, Keith, is the rents are actually following the prices. It takes about 8 months, what we have seen in our regional area here, for the rents to catch up with the increase in price in that area. But the cash flow is absolutely amazing. Much better than Palm Bay. You know, Ocala, you're going to get better cash flow. You're going to get great tenants. Who is actually there? Amazon, FedEx Hub, not only a distribution. FedEx Hub is there. We have Chewy, the pet supply company. We have Napa Auto Parts. We have Ocala Regional Medical Center, which is the only level 1 trauma center in the whole area that is doing $100 million expansion. So a lot more nurses, a lot more doctors are moving into the area. Technology companies are moving very heavily into Ocala right now. And absolutely, if you're not familiar with the World Equestrian Center, that's almost $1.5 billion investment in the equestrian community. So a lot of very high profile and very high network people are moving into that area so they can train with their horses all year. That generates a huge demand for housing, as well as for their crews, their trainers, the people that work within the horse industry. But we have been very successful in getting tenants that have over 720 credit scores to move into our properties in that area.
This is the sweet spot, investor advantaged areas in the path of progress. Tell me in general, when you develop an area, Wagner, what are you doing there? Is it 1 to 4 unit properties, and is it infill lots, or is it a bunch of contiguous lots that are developed?
So, Keith, today we have close to 3,000 units available, 3,000 doors that we're going to be developing throughout the year. So, usually what we look for is we have extensive meetings with the economical development team from the cities. And first, we understand what product we have a demand for. What is the base salary of the companies moving into that area? How many employees do they forecast to move in and when? And then we buy either infill lots in that area or tracts of land. The tracts of lands, I have an example for you right now, and we're going to be launching it very soon to a lot of your listeners. It's called Benna Oaks. That's a 419 single-family home community, all for rent. And what do we actually have that is different from an apartment building? Well, we have single-family homes, which is a big difference, but we also have the amenities of an apartment building complex. We have swimming pool, gourmet barbecue area. We have walking trails, kids' playground, pickleball court, tennis court. So we add a lot of value. So we have both. We look for very high cash flow and appreciation infill lots, but we're developing very large tracts of lands as well. That is really the new concept, in which is all over Wall Street right now, which is the build-to-rent space. And we're getting very heavily into the community development from ground up. So we buy 100, 107 acres, and we develop 400, 450. Some of the developments that we have Camilla coming up, 264 doors, all quads, with a commercial component as well in Bellevue, Florida. So to answer your question, we work on both ends, but we have seen the community, the build-to-rent communities being a great asset and a great demand because we have all these amenities in place with a very low HOA fee.
When you have a master plan community with amenities like a swimming pool and a gym and a clubhouse, that certainly helps with tenant retention, as does the fact that your properties are new. Tenants often feel like staying there because it feels like their own if they're the first one that's ever lived there. We're going to talk more about the properties and what are the upsides and the downsides of build-to-rent, new construction, single-family homes, and larger properties. You're listening to Get Rich Education. More when we come back. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. The people that our listeners can't stop talking about are Ridge Lending Group, NMLS 42056. They've provided GRE listeners with more loans than anyone, and it's where I got my last few loans. They finance single-family income property up to four-plexes. They're the #1 lender for beginners and veterans. Start your pre-qualification, chat with President Chaley Ridge personally, and get your custom plan for expanding your cash-flowing portfolio. Start at ridgelendinggroup.com. You know, a lot of investors choose either cash flow or home price appreciation, but one real estate market could provide both: Jacksonville, Florida. They've got 27% lower home prices and higher rents than the national median. Their market has appreciated 34% more than other comparable cash flow markets over the last 30 years. Get positive cash flow today and above average appreciation for tomorrow. They often have available inventory in Jacksonville, if you can believe that. Start at cashflowandgrowth.com.
Hi, this is Russell Gray, co-host of the Real Estate Guys radio show, and you're listening to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold. Don't quit your daydream.
Welcome back to Get Rich Education. We're talking about path of progress, cash flow, real estate investing in Florida. If you want to learn more, Wagner's put together a great report for you of the advantages of build-to-rent, brand new construction rental property, many of which you've probably never thought about yourself. You can learn more about that and get all of his contact information at getricheducation.com/Sunshine State. Welcome back, Wagner. Let's talk more about those properties themselves. As we talked about the areas and what makes a good place to build, oftentimes you found that the cost savings that you can generate for a buyer are substantial because that buyer has the ability to buy directly from you, the developer and builder, and not through an owner and not through a realtor where they have to pay those expenses. Tell us more about that.
I actually made a little list, and we have over 10 advantages of buying build-to-rent properties, but I'm going to touch on some subjects for you. I think, as you said very well, cost savings, right? Everybody keeps asking, well, don't we always buy from the builder and the developer? And the answer is no. A lot of times you buy through a broker, you buy from a homeowner, you buy existing property from a bank, a distressed property. So in this case, you're going to be buying directly from the source. And what does that mean? It means cost savings, right? We actually have a margin that we need to make on each house. As you know, Keith, and we have been friends for a while, all of our houses have built-in equity. And because you're buying directly from the builder and for the developer. When you buy a new property, it's usually, at fair market value, not through us. Because of the cost savings, what we do, we actually sell you properties much less expensive than what you actually find it on the market. I'll give you a perfect example. In Beta Oaks right now, we're selling those properties at 3.2, about 1,400 square feet, two-car garage. It is a concrete block construction. We're selling it for $225. We just did a recent appraisal for our construction loan, and that property came in appraised at $249,000. That actually is massive for an investor because having that built-in equity and those cost savings right at the beginning, it makes a huge difference on your active and future cash flow projections.
If you, the listener, are new to this turnkey real estate investing world, this build-to-rent construction world for income property, a common question, I think, among newcomers is, now, why in the heck would a provider like that sell a property to me for less than the true market value, less than the true appraised value? Well, we've talked about it elsewhere on other shows, but the short answer is the fact that sellers like this would actually rather deal with investors than homeowners because investors tend to be less picky about every little thing and colors, and investors also typically buy multiple properties. So it often makes more sense for a builder developer like this in the build to rent space to serve investors rather than homeowners. And be it in the build to rent space with a new construction home, tell us about some more of those advantages. I know you've identified 10 advantages of build to rent income properties over conventional renovated property, Wagner.
The second one I would say for one of the largest build-to-rent advantages is the high cash flow yields, right? So when the properties are new, you have very little expenses because every property is under warranty. So the number two will really be low cost of maintenance and low expenses because everything on the property is new and under warranty. And I'm going to touch a little bit about on the warranty coming up. So I would probably say the third one, Keith, as you know very well, we only build tenant resilient homes. What is tenant resilient for a listener? Actually, those are houses that we designed and engineered them in-house with our own architectural team and engineering team, and we go above and beyond. There's no additional options you can request because they're all included. Vinyl floors or tile floors, granite countertops, LED lighting. The water heaters we purchase are commercial or professional water heaters. Those are usually utilized in restaurants in very high traffic areas. That is a big, huge advantage because it's going to last longer for the investors. And that's what we're looking for. Very low maintenance housing, Keith. That's what actually tenant resilient means for us. All concrete block, hip roofing, stainless steel appliances. All of our houses come with stainless steel appliances, right? So that's a big plus. And actually, it's what we call also tenant ready. Our investors don't have to put $1 into the property to get them tenanted. Huge. We developed this, we created this, we patented this process, which is called tenant resilient, and you can only get this through a build-to-rent direct provider such as us, right? Fourth is actually warranty. When you buy an existing property, usually there's no warranty, especially if it's a flip, if it's a turnkey property, because we only build new. Not only you have our warranty, which is a 1 year, bumper-to-bumper warranty. I know houses doesn't have bumpers, but it covers pretty much everything. And the state of Florida demands us by law that we give a 10-year warranty on the structure of the house. We're now offering 2-10 warranties on every house we do. So that's going to have actually been insured and actually guaranteed by a third-party independent company as well. So every house we rent, Keith, we collect first, last, and a minimum of one security deposit. That actually helps you pre-qualify the tenant. Because if he only has the first month and a security deposit, that's not a good tenant that I want on my homes, then definitely I wouldn't suggest to one of your listeners.
That's a great distinction and a great way to help qualify your tenant. Tell us about some of those other build-to-rent advantages.
Easy financing. We talk about financing, interest rates being the low interest rates since the past 50 years, but easy financing is huge. And why do you get easy financing from build-to-rent? Well, you don't have to do a four-point inspection on those homes. You don't have to do a wind mitigation right now that insurance companies are requiring. And that's because the property is brand new. We have the newest construction codes in the country. And one of the hardest ones to comply is the state of Florida. So that helps you tremendously on approving your financing with national lenders, especially for investment properties, Fannie Mae, Fannie Mac, conventional.
For those that haven't invested in Florida before on a new construction property, you're going to find the insurance cost is often inordinately low. And part of the reason is you don't have to do a wind mitigation report like you do on renovated Florida property. A wind mitigation report, that's something that informs the insurance company of a home's construction stability in the event of strong winds. And in Florida, that's typically done by a licensed general contractor or an architect or a building inspector. That doesn't need to take place here with new construction property.
You're absolutely correct. The next one, Keith, is higher tenant retention. New properties, usually we have seen 3 to 4 years before you actually have to look for a new tenant. Why? They cook their first meal. They take their first bath. They actually have this sense of ownership on a new property. Right. So new homes, built-to-rent properties, usually we have seen tenants living in the same property and renew their contracts for 3 to 4 years. So tenant retention is huge. Location is the next one. Well, why location, Wagner? Well, because we're building new, we'll find a lot that is actually closer to the employers. Because we're not buying a pre-existing property that is already there, we can find where to build. And we usually look for locations that have very high demand for jobs. And actually, we can select the location. We don't have to go with the flow, just like a dead fish. We can select the location and actually build there. The next one is the builders. We buy in bulk, meaning if we buy the vinyl flooring in bulk, if we buy the drywall, the concrete block, we can pass more savings to you, right? If I'm only building one house or two homes, I can get those savings. I don't import any products. I don't have any cost savings in high economy of scale. So because we actually are builders and all of our builders, they buy in bulk, they save money and we pass those along. The next one is built-in equity, as we had said, Keith. Built-in equity. We have a set margin we need to make on a per house basis. We don't try to sell you at fair market value and reap all of that meat off the bone. We leave the meat of the bone for the investors. Why? Because we want you to buy multiple properties through your investment career through us. If we give you a good deal, we're not being nice. We're just actually giving you a little bit about the taste of the product that we built so you can come back and buy more and it's going to be a great deal for you. Last but not least, you already mentioned is the lower insurance cost because we actually comply with 2021, 2022 construction codes. Actually, our insurance on a new property is between 66 to 70% less expensive than an existing home. And I think, wow, the replacement cost of an existing home and a new home is probably very different. The probability of something happening on a new construction property is very little to non-existent because we already comply with all the rules and regulations of the building code at the beginning and not at the end, right? A 40, 50, 60-year-old property will not have the same requirements on a roofing system, window, and on a shingle than what a new property would. So very low interest insurance costs is really going to help you make that cash flow even more interesting. And that actually concludes our list of the 10 reasons why you should buy a build-to-rent property.
And these new build properties look terrific for both investors and for tenants. And a savvy investor really kind of can think of the tenant as part of their team that makes this investment work over time. Of course, the other key team member that makes this work over time is management. So what do you do for property management solutions for investors that want to come in and buy a number of these build-to-rent homes, Wagner?
That's a great question, Keith. We open up our own property management. We are a fully licensed brokerage agency here in the state of Florida as well. We have a CAM license, which is Community Association Management, which is the highest license you can have for property management issued by the state of Florida. So we have our own property management. Why? Because we can give you lower rates than anybody else. And we only manage properties that we build or one of our builders produce because we know the quality. We know actually what the replacement items are. And actually, it makes it less expensive to the investor on the long run. So prices, what are we charging for property management? We charge 75% only of the first month. Renewing contracts are only $150. You don't have to pay to place a tenant again. And we charge an 8% fee for property management on a monthly basis of all collected rent. So it's 75% of the first month, 8% a month, and only $150 for renewal fees.
So it was 75% of 1 month's rent to place a tenant initially. And then what was the $150 for?
If the tenant decides to extend the contract for another year, you don't have to pay the tenant placement again. It's only $150.
Okay, got it. And then an 8% management fee, which is pretty good on a national basis. Are there any last things that one should know about the properties, Wagner? What's coming up? Are they single-family homes, duplexes, fourplexes, any larger ones?
We have single-family homes, townhomes, and quadruplexes coming up. Remember, if you guys are a Fannie and Freddie, if you're not maxed out yet, this is the highest numbers of doors that you can acquire on a Fannie and Freddie loan. So a lot of investors that are not ready to multifamily yet, but they wanted to have those multiple doors to have a larger yield on their cash flow. Quads are absolutely amazing. They're in high demand. So we're going to have quads, single family homes and townhomes coming off the pipeline, everything brand new, tenant resident kits exclusively for your listeners. And we're here in Florida. If you want to come and do a tour, take a look at the existing properties we have built, request videos of what we have built. We have everything available. We'd be more than glad to share.
So tell us about how it works. This is probably going to interest an awful lot of people, these path of progress, new build income properties. Can one reserve a property with a deposit and then a few months down the road, that property will actually be built and can be tenant occupied? Tell us about that availability.
The process is very simple. So once you contact us, our property is pretty much just like the Amazon. You get on our website, you reserve your own property, and within 24 hours, we'll send you a contract. The build time is about 8 months. We can really build a house key in about 90 days. But because of permitting process after COVID, windows are now almost 12 weeks to be delivered. Trusses are 14 weeks. So a lot of materials are not readily available anymore. So we need a little bit more time to plan and to wait for them to arrive. So 8 months is a pretty good time for delivery on new builds, actually in average on the state of Florida. If you bought a property today, probably looking at a June 2022 for delivery, your team and our team, we're gonna streamline and make this process extremely easy for you to acquire a property. Our team is 100% available. We're very responsive. As I had mentioned before, we have a very high rate on customer satisfaction, and that's definitely a priority for us.
So it is a patient dollar for you, the investor these days, but just to connect with someone that reliably brings supply and the right kind of supply at all is somewhat of a rare thing in today's market. If you want to learn more, Wagner put together a report for you. Again, that's available at getricheducation.com/Sunshine State. You can learn some more about the market, get a hold of Wagner and his team's contact information all that way at getricheducation.com/Sunshine State. Thanks so much for coming on to the show.
Thank you so much, Keith. Just want to tell your listeners that you're absolutely amazing. It's always a pleasure to be here with you, and our home is your home. We actually invest in every area we sell personally. That's really important. If somebody is trying to sell your property and they don't have their own portfolio, they're not buying where they're selling, be careful. That's not what we do. We buy everywhere we sell. We eat from our own cooking, and Florida is absolutely amazing. We're lucky to be here, and just take action. That's the message I have for them, Keith. If you wait a year or 6 months to take that action, doesn't matter where you buy. Just make that move. Start building your portfolio, because this is what made me semi-retire in 2016 with financial freedom. And if you're sitting there, drinking a little Corona on your couch and waiting for the time to pass, in a year from now, you're going to listen to Keith Weinhold again, and you haven't purchased anything. So whatever your plan may be, just take action. Prepare yourself, educate yourself, listen to the podcast, and take action, guys. Thank you very much, Keith. I really appreciate the opportunity.
You and I are two men that eat our own cooking. We invest in Florida income property ourselves. Wagner, thanks so much for coming on to the show. Yeah, great stuff from Wagner, a passionate operator. I like to ponder the question, really, that no one knows the answer to. How long can this last, where you can get Florida cash flow in some of these properties, even with close proximity to a beach? And now in California, that is an investor value proposition that dried up decades ago. And understand that when I talk about coastal markets, these new build to rent properties, they're not going to be right on the coast, like where you can hear the ocean surf crashing out of a window. That setup does not make sense for long-term rentals, which is what we're talking about today. those properties where you can hear the surf out the window, that's a more likely candidate to be profitable if it were in a short-term rental pool like Airbnb. Although short-term rentals can certainly be profitable, that's just different than what we're talking about here. And one reason that we discuss long-term rentals so much on this show is that it's a generationally proven wealth creator for everyday people, and there's going to be less management expense than there are with short-term rentals. And understand as well that if you buy a property as a long-term rental, you can often convert that to a short-term rental. But with short-term rentals, like something right on the ocean there, that often cannot be converted to a long-term rental because it wouldn't cash flow. Those purchase prices are so high on a property where you can hear that surf out the window. So with durable, new build, long-term rental property like this, just own some, just lock up some property. And once you do, now you've got options. Now you've got something to work with. Now, with some appreciation, you could do a cash out refinance, which is a tax-free event. Now you've got long-term fixed interest rate debt tied to historically low rates. And, did you like learning today about how they make tenants pay the first month's and the last month's rent in addition to the security deposit? If you can do that, you really do promote a higher tenant quality than if you only ask for the first month's rent and the security deposit. If you want to get started, there are responsive people now that can help you that way. As a reminder, you can get started, get the report, see some maps in there, look at some sample properties, see the pro forma cash flow statements, and all of the provider contact details are there at getricheducation.com/Sunshine State. Until next week, I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Don't quit your daydream.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Get Rich Education, LLC exclusively.
The preceding program was brought to you by your home for wealth building, GetRichEducation.com.